I'm making a quick video because I'm walking along the riverside again from the Staithes where I live. I walked along here yesterday, past all the daffodils, the dandelions, and never seen one single bee. My friend Abesh was with us, he witnessed it. He couldn't believe it either because he lives down London. Right, so I'll just show you quickly. See all these thousands of flowers? Not one single bee. Same as yesterday. All the way along the edge, even the wildflowers along the edge, I was looking for any insects just crossing the path. Nothing. I'm not just saying this, and it's all down to these street lights. The 5G, the radiation, kills the insects first. Look, there's another look, all these wildflowers, not one single insect on them. Nothing, not even a fly flying about yesterday. And I walked all the way along here, over the swing bridge, and honestly, you can come down, you can look for yourselves. There would normally be bees everywhere, butterflies, even flies, insects. You just see them crawling inside the flowers. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. People need to wake up and realise it starts with the insects and gradually it's going to kill everything. I'll just... one last look. See? Not one single bee. I'm not making this up. Have a look. Nothing. All the insects are dead.
All right, folks, this is Joe Imbriano, and once again, we're in a lot of trouble. You know, I don't know why people seem to think it's okay to let them get irradiated. I don't understand what's the matter with you people. Do you think these systems that they're putting up on these towers are there so you can watch Netflix and play video games on your phone while you're taking a dump? Do you not realize what is in store for people right now? Do you realize what they're doing with this stuff? Do you realize what this stuff does? These towers are weaponry. These systems are weaponized. I'm going to go over a couple things with you. I've gone over a lot of things in the past, but I'm going to keep hitting on this because it's not sinking in. Most people are in a trance. Most people are zombies. Most people are self-absorbed, myopic children, even though they're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, even 80 years old. They just want to go and stare at the TV and cuddle up with their little blankie and stay on their merry-go-round and microwave their Hot Pockets. Folks, we are being herded into the compact cities, and they're putting the towers in. Now they're going to be putting in the microcells instead of these huge towers that are already in place, with power generating systems the size of shipping containers next to them, with cables 4 to 5 inches in diameter capable of handling hundreds of thousands of volts, what, for 5 watts of power? Are you freaking kidding me? Okay. What's coming is a kill grid. Make no bones about it. These people, tell your kids we're overpopulated. These people that run things like Mr. Gates, Prince Philip, Mr. Rockefeller, the Rothschilds, all these people talk about how to reduce the population to 95% down from what it is right now. We are in the midst of a silent war. They're not going to fire a shot, folks. They're going to cook you. And they're going to do it with invisible radio frequency emissions that you're addicted to and in love with because your junk works no matter where you go. You got to have your texts. You got to have your emails. You got to check your Facebook. Look, I know. I'm a salesman. I'm on the road. I'm in the field. I'm in the office. I need to be in touch with people. People need to be in touch with me. I'm a researcher. I'm an activist. I need to be in touch with people. People need to be in touch with me. But at what cost? Now, the frequencies that they're deploying are weaponized frequencies. And I'm going to explain this to you. Right now, the Wi-Fi in your house is 2.4 gigahertz. That's a frequency that stuff broadcasts on. Now, you can't open up a radio station without an FCC license. You've got to have a license to broadcast, and you've got to be given access to certain frequencies to broadcast on. That's called spectrum. They allot certain spectrum to certain companies, and if you haven't figured it out, your parents and your grandparents were watching the idiot box on the spectrum that was opened up 80 years ago, and the radio stations and the TV stations are controlled by 5 companies. Now they're probably controlled by 3 or 2. They have been feeding you lies for decades and decades and decades. You can't broadcast unless the FCC gives you a license. Now what they've done is the most harmful frequencies imaginable. You know, the 2.4 gigahertz, that happens to be the frequency that the water molecules start to rotate on their axis when they're hit with the radio frequency emissions at that particular frequency. Why are they messing with the water molecules? Well, we're 70% water, and they know what this stuff does. So what the FCC did is they opened up that frequency band, that part of the spectrum, to everybody. You don't need a license to broadcast on it. And you know what that did? That virtually ensures complete proliferation and saturation of radio frequency emissions in that part of the spectrum. In other words, they want to bathe you in the frequency that messes with the water molecules. Is that a good idea? That's not a good idea. Maybe you're not aware of this. So they got you addicted to Wi-Fi and your gadgets. They're doubling down now because they're coming out with a new frequency. Because they claim that you can't get enough of your Netflix and enough of your stupid movies or whatever you have to check, that these frequencies are getting congested. There's too much traffic. It's a bunch of frickin' hogwash, folks. Everything works just fine right now. The systems that are in place with these towers is so overkill it's not even funny. They could run 100,000 times more devices than they're using right now. They got you addicted to these devices. Now they're going to bring a new technology out. This really scares me to go into this because this is the end. They've opened up, the FCC's opened up the millimeter wave band, and they're going to be broadcasting on 60 gigahertz, folks. Wi-Fi right now is using the frequency of water molecules. Their rotation on their axis begins at 2.4 gigahertz. In other words, that's the spot on the spectrum of the trillions of frequencies. That's the spot on the spectrum where the maximum dielectric loss of water begins. That's a fancy term for when they start rotating, trying to line up to keep pace with the alternating field, electromagnetic field. So it causes water molecules to vibrate on their axis. Well, they're going to use 60 gigahertz for the new 5G and the new Wi-Fi. It's called WiGig. Okay? You need to understand something. This stuff is wicked because 60 gigahertz is the oxygen molecule absorption spectrum. I repeat that. This is the frequency that the oxygen molecules start reacting to. So they're using Wi-Fi to mess with the water. They're going to use WiGig and 5G to mess with the oxygen. Now this crap doesn't travel far, so they got to put them really close together. They're going to put these little transmitters all over the light poles, telephone poles, light poles, public buildings, and you've got to put it in your house because the crap's not going to work. And I keep saying crap because this is crap. It's a weapon. And they're going to get you to go to Costco and bring it home in big boxes, and you're going to put it all over your house because you're stupid and you're not listening to me. You need to understand something. You need to stop killing yourselves, okay? That's what these people have managed to get you to do. They have managed to get you to kill yourselves and enjoy it. And kill your children and pay for it. WiGig, 5G, 60 gigahertz. Get that through your skulls. You don't mess with oxygen molecules. Oxygen is in the air. We breathe it. It comes from the trees. Trees make it out of carbon dioxide. I think we've all been taught this. It's 2 oxygen molecules, and they share electrons. When you hit oxygen molecules with 60 gigahertz millimeter wave emissions, it affects the orbital properties of the electrons of the oxygen molecules. Now, Why is that important? How is oxygen absorbed into your body? Well, it's pretty complicated and it's miraculous what God has done, how He's created our bodies and He's created these mechanisms, and He created a molecule called hemoglobin, and it binds to the iron. You know that iron is magnetic. Have you ever heard of the word magnetobiology? If any of you out there are physicians or doctors or physicists or biochemists or any type of researchers, I bet you've never heard of that field of study. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and I have a bachelor's degree in biological science. And when I went to UCI for 5 years, none of the curriculum included anything remotely close to the interactions of electromagnetic fields with living tissue. They don't want you to know about how this works, because this is a secret stealth weapon that they're touting as the neatest thing since sliced bread. It is right now making up the majority of the economy. And if this technology was to be exposed for what it truly is, it would collapse the economy. They've got everything intertwined in this. The pension funds are infested with investments in these companies. They're rolling this out so fast, and they're passing laws at the federal and the state and the local levels to where you can't say no to this crap. And they built this whole infrastructure's legal ability to exist on research that was done in the 1980s, and it was passed in 1996 by that dirtbag Bill Clinton. Yes, Bill Clinton signed the Telecom Act. He is the one that put the death knell to humanity, okay? He's the one. They're using 30-year-old research that was rigged from the get-go, and now they're rolling out technology that they've never even publicly released the testing on. They know what this stuff does. That's why they're doing it. They know what this stuff is capable of. That's why they're rolling it out. And they used a framework from 30-year-old rigged research 22 years ago to get this thing put in. So where the companies that have access to public right-of-ways only have to pay a small amount of money because the city has to give them access. And any tower under 150 feet, no one's regulating the emissions. No one's checking the power levels. No one's babysitting these weapons, folks. You're going to bring this crap in your house. They're going to put this stuff outside your house, and it's going to affect the oxygen molecules. Here's what they're going to do. When you start affecting the oxygen molecules' ability to bind to the hemoglobin in your blood, you can't transport the oxygen into your tissues. Okay? It does other things to your body that I'm not going to go into right now. I'll briefly touch on it right now. Actually, I'll tell you real briefly, it also affects your ability to produce vitamin D. It affects your body's ability to produce vitamin D. 60 gigahertz is a weapon. It affects the oxygen molecules, and it affects your skin's ability to produce vitamin D. Your skin produces vitamin D when sunlight hits your skin. It produces a reaction in your skin whereby your body begins to manufacture vitamin D. And also, the same thing happens when the sunlight goes through your eyes. Okay, that's why they got you wearing sunglasses and contacts. So they got you blocking all the sun. They don't want you in the sun, folks. They want you deficient. I don't want to get off track here. The bottom line is this stuff is a weapon. You need to wake up, and you need to understand that it doesn't travel far. Trees block it. The low-E film on your windows blocks it. Mylar film blocks it. Metal screens blocks it. You can buy paint that blocks it. Don't bring this crap into your house. Because if you have this stuff in your house, it's a slow kill, folks. Because what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to have the oxygen levels in your blood that your body needs to survive. You're not going to die immediately from this stuff. It's just going to cause all kinds of weird health problems. And guess what they're going to do? It's going to create symptoms, because I know for a fact what this stuff does. There are 2 locations in the United States where this was rolled out in schools, and it produced paralysis, arrhythmia, neurological problems, problems with tingling in the extremities, people passing out, people having fatigue, malaise, all these bizarre ailments. I guarantee you, folks, when they roll this stuff out, they're going to turn it on in such a way that it's going to seem like polio came back. And you know what they got ready for you? A vaccine. What do we hear about all the time on the news now? Vaccines, vaccines, vaccines. I'm in California, and guess what? You can't put your kids in one of these government mind control facilities unless you inject them with like 60 shots. Now, if you have any brains, you won't go for that, and you'll find a way out of it. And you know how to do that. You can homeschool your kids, or you can get a medical exemption. You got to do what you got to do to protect your children. Now, they are going to roll out a microwave weaponry system that is going to induce symptoms that people are going to think are a new type of virulent strain of polio or some sort of neuroinvasive encephalitis or some sort of paralytic disease that they're going to blame on some newly discovered strain of something, and they're going to have a shot ready for you, and they're going to make it mandatory. Mark my words, that's the plan here. Aside from the fact that this stuff's going to make you sick and it's going to screw everybody up, it's going to make a lot of people very wealthy. And it's going to concentrate power because a sick, weak-minded populace becomes servile and slaves really quick. There's a big push to get everybody into the compact cities. There's a big push to build high-density housing. There's a big push to go 10 stories, put Wi-Fi routers everywhere, have free Wi-Fi everywhere, have all these things in place, folks. They're putting chemicals in the water. You got to filter your water if you're going to drink it. You got to grow your own food. You can't eat this stuff in the store. You don't know what's in it. Now they got these weapons that they've put into the classrooms. They put in the schools. They put them into the buses, the trains, the planes. The cars got Wi-Fi in them now. And now you go outside. You look at your phone. There's 50 networks when you're walking down the street. There's cell towers everywhere. And then now they put these LED lights in, so it's white light at night, so you can't sleep. It's messing up your sleep cycle. Folks, wake the heck up. Okay? You're not going to hear this at church. You're not going to hear this at school. You're not going to hear it on TV. TV is a bunch of pornography and crazy movies. The churches are all sold out. They're not talking about nothing. They're just collecting your money and putting you to sleep. And the schools are making everybody stupid. So where are you going to hear this information? On the internet. And you better get with the program before they shut it all down. This is Joe Briano warning you to wake the hell up. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm from your telephone company.
The telephone, the greatest advancement in human communication since the printing press. Its proliferation throughout society spurred innovation, created jobs, helped grow the economy, and brought people closer together.
Can you bring me my chopstick?
But it wasn't without its flaws. You usually had to be stuck in one place in order to use one.
Give us that back!
No!
Which could be frustrating. If only you could go wherever you wanted while talking on the phone.
I'm a little black woman in a big...
Those who thought that getting a car phone wasn't for them weren't keeping up with the booming industry of cellular radio telephone. Wireless technology and devices have forever changed how we communicate with family and close friends. In the U.S., the wireless industry is responsible for 3.8 million jobs and generates over $146.2 billion annually. In the United States alone, there are over 200 million cell phones in use. Globally, this figure stands at 4.77 billion and is expected to reach 6.1 billion by 2020.
Prior to 1984, wireless technology was only used in the military. And in 1984 was the first move to take wireless technology into the consumer environment. Cell phones, at the time, they were excluded from any pre-market testing. So they came onto the market without any safety testing at all.
When we evolved on the planet, there was no microwave radiation other than this infinitesimal amount. And what we have added today is a billion times more microwave radiation. Our bodies didn't evolve with it, and we have no protection against it. So it's invisible, but it's a very real environmental pollutant.
EMF, or electromagnetic fields, are invisible forms of energy, often referred to as radiation. They are associated with the use of electrical power in various technologies, including wireless devices.
We are electrical in nature. We are made of the same stuff as everything else. We are made of atoms, and atoms are made of electrons, which are negatively charged, protons that are positively charged, and we react to electromagnetic fields. So it's not surprising that we respond to all kinds of things.
So there's various kinds of radiation. One of the distinctions that's made is between ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation. That distinction reflects the energy that the radiation delivers and whether it breaks up molecules as it passes through tissues.
The electromagnetic spectrum measures different levels of radiation. Non-ionizing radiation emits lower energy, while ionizing radiation emits higher energy. The higher the energy, the more dangerous it becomes for our health. Most people are able to tolerate lower energy fields, such as AM/FM radio, for example. Wireless technology emits non-ionizing radiation known as radio frequencies. Regulatory agencies consider these emissions safe for short periods of time, but increased exposure could have dangerous biological effects. The light from the sun causes sunburn or skin cancer in some. Overexposure to X-rays and cosmic rays are dangerous.
Where there's scientific uncertainty and a need for research is how non-ionizing radiation might cause some of the diseases that are of concern, some of the diseases we've seen epidemiologically. So yes, we know that there's a potential to heat, and then there are questions about whether there are other potential mechanisms.
As a society, we are very fond of things that make life easier or more enjoyable. Anything that provides release from the stress of everyday life. But history has shown our enjoyment or dependence on these things can blind us to their adverse effects and influence us to ignore obvious warning signs.
To date, scientists have not found any substance, as contained in smoke, that is known to be responsible for human disease.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor? Smoking was a major factor.
Could where you carry your cell phone make you sick? Some doctors say they're seeing evidence of cancer that could be linked to mobile phones.
It's convenient, say many young women.
It's probably the most convenient place to put it, especially when you go out. You know, you put your money on one breast and your phone in the other.
If I'm wearing a dress ever, I usually just slip it like in the straps or down in the center.
I used to carry my cell phone in my bra whenever I'd use a Bluetooth headset because the connection was poor. Otherwise, if it was anything further away, it just wouldn't work well. I don't have a family history of cancer, and so cancer was nowhere in the radar as far as something I thought that I would ever have to deal with in my life. I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and they found 5 tumors pretty much in the footprint of where the phone used to sit, right in the kind of setup area of my chest. The morning of my mammogram and ultrasound, my husband and I were trying to locate the lump. We were going to mark it with a Sharpie so that it would be easy to point out to the person who's going to do the testing. And I pointed at one spot, and he said, and then he was trying to feel it. And he said, no, it's right here. No, I said, it's right here, not realizing at the time that we actually found another one that morning. And here we were arguing that morning. He says, no, this is it. And he was arguing that was it. And we actually come to find out that morning, actually, we had discovered another one.
I'm not the kind of person that's an advocate for these unusual problems. I don't go into crazy diets. I don't worry about the environment maybe as much as I should. I really am a focused physician. But when Donna came in with her case, it kind of opened my mind. It didn't convince me there was a problem, but I remember sitting very clearly looking at her slides with the pathologist. And I said, well, how many tumors are there in this breast? She said, well, there's basically 3 dominant tumors. It wasn't until we looked at her mastectomy specimen under the microscope and saw what wasn't just a single cancer, but it was multiple cancers, but it was very extensive in a very unusual pattern. And that's when it clicked with me. I said, you know, I don't remember seeing that pattern in anybody before. And I remember her saying she's worried about her cell phone. Could there be a connection?
The best evidence that we have for an adverse effect of RF is an increase in the frequency of cancer.
The wireless industry denies there's a problem, citing a lack of scientific evidence that cell phones cause breast cancer.
There is no evidence, but that's because we haven't studied it.
Until further data either supports it or disproves it, I would keep cell phones away from the body, and in particular, the breasts.
We have cancer registries in place that quite carefully track new cancers among children and adults. They work with the hospitals, the clinics, the pathologists to identify each new case. And this is to help us understand how much cancer there is, what kinds there are, and what directions the rates are going. Are they going up or down?
The question comes up, how long would it take to prove that cell phones could cause it based on the way we figured out smoking caused lung cancer? And there's no database. All this stuff takes years to accumulate. The doctors, by and large, aren't asking patients, you know, did you put your cell phone in your bra? Yes, a few of them are, and I've had phone calls, and I've had patients come to me because their doctor made the connection. So it is happening, but it's not like with lung cancer. I think it may take longer for cell phones to accumulate enough data to really prove it's a risk factor for breast cancer.
How is it that wireless devices and Wi-Fi have been able to permeate our daily lives over the last 20 years without the public being made aware of the associated dangers?
So back in 1984, the 2 key agencies were the FDA for the devices and the EPA for the infrastructure.
The FDA, or Food and Drug Administration, was established to protect and promote public health through the regulation of the food, tobacco, veterinary, cosmetic, and pharmaceutical industries. The EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, was created for the purpose of protecting human health and the environment by writing and enforcing regulations. Neither agency had any previous experience with the regulation or safety testing of new technology.
Both of those agencies preempted either pre-market testing or post-market surveillance because at the time it was felt that the power was so low for cell phone transmissions that there could not be heating. And without heating, there could not be health effects.
My name's Jamie. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm a photographer, and I'm electrosensitive. I'm going to turn this off. This is a kill switch because it's an electric stove, and like most things electric, it triggers me, so even making something simple and boring like quesadilla, he's on it?
No.
All right.
Electrohypersensitivity, or electrosensitivity, is the sensitivity to electromagnetic fields in the environment.
I think when cell phones first came out, we'd have, you know, the burning feeling, the hot ear syndrome, kind of headache, but didn't think anything about it because we were all told they were awesome and safe. Another aha moment was when we had wireless. Just watching movies on the laptop, the symptoms would start. Headache, brain fog, itchy eyes. I just thought maybe I'm staring at the screen too long. I would get a zing when we drive up and down the 405. Every time, especially this tower close to our on-ramp, I would get like a zing. It's like a burning feeling.
Electrohypersensitivity, or EHS, is currently not a recognized medical diagnosis. Experts are still divided as to its validity, and the World Health Organization claims there is no diagnostic criteria to link EHS to exposure to electromagnetic fields or microwave radiation.
I was diagnosed with EHS in 2011.
I became electromagnetically hypersensitive in 2009.
There are many symptoms, but when I'm in a high EMF environment or in a place with strong Wi-Fi, first it starts off with a burning sensation in my forehead.
Dizziness, fatigue.
Pain in the back of my head.
Right in my neck and a headache.
And my muscles start pulsing or vibrating.
Where I feel like I'm going to throw up.
Heart palpitations, breathlessness, feeling faint.
I left my home for 3 weeks and I didn't have a headache the entire time I was gone. I came back into my house. My headaches returned immediately.
See, microwave radiation is the ultimate pollutant. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't hear it, but you can feel it.
Electrosensitivity is something that people have started to describe in recent years, and there are very few studies of it, let's put it that way. But a study was done down at the University of Texas by Dr. Ria, where he had people in a room and actually exposed them to radio frequency signal. And he was able to show bona fide cases where people could identify correctly when the field was on and when the field was not on.
If there was somebody that was questioning whether this is psychological or biological, I just say, come live with somebody who's sensitive. It's not even that he's thinking about it and then starts to feel ill. He'll start to feel ill and then we'll notice, okay, something's off. I think a lot of people are having these types of symptoms and have no idea what's causing it. There are so few physicians that deal with any of these issues, and most of them are very expensive. But those are the people that even know what's causing their problems. And there's a lot of people who, when they even do figure it out, those around them are skeptical, and so they don't have the support.
Now, what's the difference between me and somebody who's electrosensitive? My body was able to adapt. Why? Well, there are genetic reasons, there are epigenetic reasons. So when you put adaptation into the equation, now it's even more complicated because the signals don't affect everybody the same way.
I'm here in Brussels to attend a conference on electrical hypersensitivity and multiple chemical sensitivity. And the reason that we're holding this conference is because there are so many people suffering from environmental illness, and it's important to get the scientific community together with the medical community so that we can help people recover from electrical hypersensitivity.
My background is as a neuroscientist. I've studied the central and peripheral nervous system. We had struggled for many years to get some form of answer to the simple question: a person with electrohypersensitivity, what is he or she?
This Congress is trying to raise awareness among healthcare practitioners because so few of them recognize environmental sensitivities, and very often people are misdiagnosed as having psychological problems rather than physiological responses to environmental stressors.
If I ask you how much more such radiation does penetrate your body today compared to like 10 years ago, is it twice as much? 3 times as much? No, it's a quintillion times more. That's a 1 with 18 zeros.
We've been looking for a house on and off for like 6 years now. And because of Jamie's electrosensitivity and other health issues, it's very, very difficult to find a house. The house had been up for sale for a few weeks, and it hadn't even occurred to me to look because it had been so difficult to find a house. But I thought, we should just look at it anyway. And Jamie walked in and said, wow, this is really great. Like, I can live here, which says a lot. Like, that doesn't happen ever.
I walk in, I usually, within half a second, know yes or no.
They're going to want to So we had just put an offer on a house, and Jamie told me that a 70-foot monopole tower was going to be erected about 3 blocks away from our house.
It's almost impossible for citizens who don't want a tower in their backyard to stop that, because the needs of the masses are greater than the needs of the individual.
I think it's an interesting area for me personally as a doctor to learn more about the electrosensitive syndrome. And I would hope that there would be criteria for the diagnosis, which we don't have today. My hope is that this should be recognized as a medical disorder and as such get an international code of diseases. That's one thing which is urgent. The other thing is to come up with some kind of treatment advice, because there are different types of treatment.
It is recognizable biologically, but the information about how to recognize it biologically is not pervaded through the medical literature.
There is an increasing body of diagnostic tests and guidelines that can correlate the exposure of a person to radiation and a physiological effect quite reliably.
You can do a blood test, you can do a urine test, you can measure malondialdehyde, lipid peroxidation, you can see what's going on with those cells, and that is a biological measure that says the person is impaired.
Recently, Professor Dominique Beltrame from France tested about 700 people who suffer from electrosensitivity. His study showed severe damage, such as damage to the immune system, to the nervous system, and established additional biomarkers for the diagnosis of electrosensitivity.
I became very involved in the cell phone brain tumor issue in 2008 when my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He had a grand mal seizure in the middle of the night and was rushed by ambulance to our local hospital. And within an hour, they had done a CT scan, and they said he had a large mass in his right frontal lobe. He had to wait, though, about 2 weeks for surgery. And what was really remarkable was that our son had worked for Senator Ted Kennedy. He was an intern for him.
We've just learned here in the last hour or so that Ted Kennedy has a brain tumor. That news.
So my son came in and he said, "Mom, I have to talk to you about something that's really bothering me." They think it was his cell phone. And I was just stunned, because my husband was a heavy user of a cell phone. He always held it to his right ear, and his tumor grew, it was his right frontal lobe. I remember that night I sat up all night long searching the internet, and I found all this information that I had no idea existed. And there were studies about it, and there were scientists in Sweden, and there were other people who were talking about how cell phones were causing brain tumors.
They were talking about cell phones and brain cancer.
We don't know why they're harmful, right?
Cheryl Crow was recently diagnosed with a benign brain tumor.
It's in my cell phone area, and there are no doctors that will confirm that. But
there's no way to say that cell phone use is safe. The public generally assumes that if one is selling something on the market, that we have had assurances that that device is safe.
There's truth and there's justice. The science is all about truth. Let's go find the truth of whether or not there are dangers and all of that. That's the truth part. But the government and regulatory authorities are all about fairness. When cell phones first came into consumer use, the purpose was to carry the signal wirelessly only a little ways, and then to convert the signal to the wired infrastructure that we had on landline, phone lines. But when we began the process of moving to digital signal, we had to have a different kind of infrastructure.
So recently, the past year or two, there has been a lot more cell towers popping up and down all over the place. So there's the existing one right there. Not sure whose it is. So there she is right there. Darcy Blows.
In 1985, the total number of cell phone towers in the United States stood at just 900. Today, that figure stands north of 215,000.
What ended up happening was that the infrastructure that would be required to deliver, cell phone signals and later Wi-Fi had to be spread all across the country in what was called cells. That's why they call them cell phones, by the way. It looks sort of like a beehive, so that every cell was like one of those little circles in a beehive. And what would happen is that the signal would go to a base station, and then as long as you were within the cell on your phone, that cell tower would be handling your call. But as soon as you moved into another cell, it would hand off the signal to the next cell tower. And that required an infrastructure so that there's always a transmission and reception loop between the cell phone and the infrastructure or the closest base station. That's also how the base station knows where you are. If you have good signals in Maryland, but you don't have good signals in Virginia, Maryland would have a commercial advantage in business. It's about fairness. And when you go back to our Constitution, the Commerce Clause is one of the big fairness clauses. So it became a federal program to build out the infrastructure. That was the rationale for the federal government being able to come in and, in effect, in some cases, step on the rights of individual citizens in order to build out the infrastructure. It's our system.
If you've been following the news, you know a group of Scottsdale parents are upset about plans to put one in operation at Copper Ridge Elementary. The district brokered a deal in which Sprint would pay $1,200 a month to use that tower. Some parents are worried about health effects on the kids, saying the money just isn't worth it.
Everyone told us, you're not going to be able to win. You're not going to be able to fight. There's nothing you can do. It's done. It's going up. It's happening. And I said to myself, if and when it does go up, I want to be able to look at it and at least say to myself, I tried.
We had like 10 days. So
then I ran around for a week, couple hours a night, trying to get signatures. Right. And then we got enough to go to City Hall, get our foot in the door.
my message was that if these cell towers were not safe enough for the fire department to have them where they live and work, then why is it safe enough to have near 3,000 children who go to school and live in the immediate area? That's how it came to pass, that we were able to stop the tower.
I live and breathe by this technology. I want to watch something while stuck in the car. I want to be able to justify being stuck in traffic and call my mom or grandma on the phone.
It's a typical human thing that, you know, we have new technology, we get very excited about it, we use it, we push it really far, and it has great applications. However, many of those often come with health considerations, and so once those become more evident to the general population, then we hopefully force the government and scientists to come up with a safer way of using that technology.
Today, our world is being remade, yet again, by an information revolution, changing the way we work, the way we live, the way we relate to each other. With a stroke of a pen, our laws will catch up with our future.
In 1995 and 1996, we began the process of a new Telecommunications Act. And the Telecommunications Act now was for the first time written to put the FCC in the role of a policing agency. But the FCC's job as a commission was fair and equitable use of spectrum. The FCC was not a policing agency, had nothing to do with safety, had nothing to do with monitoring, only to make sure that the different phone companies didn't cheat each other. That's an important point, because it was the industry that lobbied to have those changes made.
Recognizing the regulatory void that existed, The cellular industry strategically positioned itself to be influential in the kind of research the government would be carrying out on its products.
So the wireless industry agreed to put up money from the cell phone industry, and an interagency working group of the United States government was put in place to oversee the work. That project was called the WTR, or Wireless Technology Research, and that's the program that I ran, looking into the health effects of wireless technology. This program was put in place under what we would call a regulatory paradigm.
Ordinarily, in a regulatory context, new technologies would be tested extensively before they reached the marketplace, in order to make sure that they didn't present any dangers to consumers. In the case of cell phones, and the wireless industry as a whole, this crucial stage was bypassed. This meant the regulatory agencies were forced to rely on post-market surveillance.
There was an argument going on between the EPA and the FDA, and the FCC was in the middle of it, about the safety standards that should be put in place for analog phones. And that standard was the specific absorption rate.
SAR, or specific absorption rate, is a measure of the rate to which energy is absorbed by the body when exposed to cell phone radiation. The smaller the body, the greater the exposed area.
But the standard was based on microwave oven studies from the 70s and 80s. It was really not relevant to anything other than heating effects.
When they did some safety testing, the device that's had the most testing is probably the mobile phone. It's one of the first devices that emits this kind of radiation. And they built a model that they called SAM, standing for Standard Anthropomorphic Mannequin. But bizarrely, what they did was SAM was based on the 90th centile of military recruits. So he wasn't representative of a child or even a woman, or actually an average man. This guy, just his head weighed 5 kilograms, which is more than some children's entire body.
I think the thing that surprised me most and really kind of caught my attention the most, which I hadn't realized, is that the manufacturers actually tell people in the instruction manual, which I never read, not to put the cell phone against your ear.
The advice in the phone tells you to keep it off the body because phones are tested in 2 positions. They are tested next to the head and next to the body. When they're tested next to the head, they're tested with a spacer. It used to be 10 millimeters away from the head. Now I think it's 6, but the point is there's a space between the phone and the head. The industry has succeeded in getting the FCC to accept an approach where the phone is not used like this. And you know that this is exactly how most people use phones.
In that time frame, in 1995, 1996, it was really the industry that was pushing for the SAR standard. And the reason was because they knew that they could easily meet the SAR standard. If you got into standards that were biologically based, actually looking at health effects and all that stuff, the industry was worried.
We do have one finding in experiments that indicates the potential for genetic damage coming from radio frequency radiation, such as that comes from the phones. And we also have an epidemiological finding of an increased risk of a very rare type of brain tumor among people who report using cellular phones.
We were sort of caught in a difficult place because some of the claims that were being made about health effects were so severe that had there been pre-market testing, cell phones never would have made it into the marketplace. So what happened was, through some lobbying efforts and in the Telecommunication Act when it was finally passed, the EPA's RF program was defunded. We didn't like what they were saying, so let's get rid of them. And that's what happened.
People deserve to have the right to know. The industry wants to keep the cat in the bag as long as they possibly can, that there is harm. They don't like the word radiation. They don't like the word safety. They're against all of this because they don't want to alarm people, and the big thing is they have no liability insurance. By Lloyd's of London or Swiss Re, the 2 top insurance companies. The main effect on the insurance industry will concern product liability claims for bodily injury. I'm involved in this issue because I love my husband. Just a few months after Alan had his diagnosis of a brain tumor, I ended up testifying to the United States Congress about it.
Today's hearing will examine what science is saying about the potential links between long-term use of cell phones and tumors or other health effects.
I see this from the public health perspective as being very, very important, that we urgently need more research. We have almost no U.S.-funded research in this area.
I'm not a scientist. I'm a human being, a mother, a wife. I do know from my research and from talking with doctors and scientists worldwide that there are major flaws, even in this Interphone study. I have in front of me something right here that says the Interphone studies always find a statistical significant elevated risk when a cell phone has been used for 10 or more years on the same side of the head where the tumor was found. I'm sorry, but I'm not understanding the lack of correlation here. The FCC is debating the science, and the FCC is a captured agency. They're captured by the telecom industry. There's a revolving door between the telecom industry and the FCC. There's people that have worked at the FCC that now work for the telecom industry. There's people that work for the telecom industry that are now at the FCC.
When I myself look at where people go for advice, so where would I go as both a parent and a medical doctor? I look at the World Health Organization, I look at my government and the education authorities and the groups like the Department of Health. And it's very hard now to find groups who are truly independent. All of these groups receive revenue from the telecommunications industry.
The wireless industry spends $100 million a year lobbying the Congress. They have very good access to the FCC, so it's really hard to go up against the power of this industry, even when you have the facts on your side.
Despite the industry attempts to suppress the findings of the scientific community, scientists continue their pioneering research into the adverse effects from EMF and RF exposures.
We're having a serious problem with global fertility reducing. There's evidence now that men who use cell phones, they have deformed sperm, they have sperm that moves much more slowly, dies much more quickly, and all of this is going to affect their ability to successfully impregnate their partners.
Men who carry their cell phones in their pockets are carrying them right next to their testes, and the sperm cells are vulnerable. In autism, we see de novo mutations, which is mutations that the babies have that the parents don't have, and that can be caused from genetic damage.
There's been a study done in Iceland where historically they have a usually homogeneous population when many of the people are related, so they have similar DNA, and when something is bad, it'll stick out like a sore thumb. They took, I think it was only 78 children, and half of them were autistic. And they analyzed the DNA of the child, and the DNA of the mother, and the DNA of the father. And they found that they had some mutations in the child that were not present in the parents. And the reason for that is very simple. Girls are born with all their eggs in an ovary, so it's pretty much guarded until puberty. The testes are exposed. It turns much more accessible to radiation. And as a result, they get irradiated. And the interesting thing is that when a spermatocyte gets irradiated, it keeps on making sperm cells with the mutations.
If there is a genetic change, a mutation, that modification will be maintained throughout the life of the individual.
I am a pediatrician, but for the last 10 years, I decided to work on epigenetic, on cancer research, because in the last 20 years, cancer is increasing in children. And not only cancer, because a lot of chronic diseases are increasing in childhood. We have an increase in autism. What we are witnessing is a real epidemiological change.
Women of reproductive age should be so careful in terms of their exposures because they can influence the health of their child even before they know that they're pregnant.
The fetus is programming itself, which means that every cell of the fetus is getting information from outside, from the environment, from the mother. All these can make a sort of mismatch in his programming.
Of all the stages of life, the fetus is by far the most vulnerable. And that's for multiple reasons. First of all, the fetus is growing cells rapidly. So cells are dividing rapidly. So if there is an exposure, that can influence the fetus and can alter the whole lifespan of the subsequent child.
The fetal programming is very important for every tissue and for every organ. The most important thing that we are trying to understand is the way in which the brain is forming in the fetus.
When something appears to be caused by an environmental influence, one ought to figure out what it would cost to take care of it or to do something to ameliorate its effects, and how it compares to what would happen if we did nothing, and we'd have to do the cleanup work afterwards.
And in 2007, we published the first bioinitiative report.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. That presentation was complete deception. I am shocked that we heard a presentation on 5G wireless deployment and not one time they even say 5G. They showed the small cells, but they never said what it actually was. 4G, which is what we are using right now, utilizes microwave frequencies. The new 5G utilizes millimeter wave frequencies. If you have ever been to the airport, the TSA body scanners use millimeter waves to x-ray you. It says so as you walk up. So if you put 5G in the city, you'll be forcing the residents to walk through x-rays every day. Millimeter wave technology was invented by the US military and was deployed as a weapon against an enemy in the Middle East. An example is called active denial system, a directed energy weapon millimeter wave system. 5G is a weapon system. There's no denying this. Over in The Hague, in the Netherlands, they installed 5G and tested to see how powerful it was. And the result is the birds fell out of the sky dead on the ground. You can look this up. If you put this up and it falls into the wrong hands, we are all in serious trouble. Now, the reason why we are told we need this is because apparently we need to be able to illegally pirate movies much quicker than we can currently. The real reason is artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, as said in the presentation. The Internet of Things is the idea that all appliances are hooked up to the Internet, like your toaster, your trash can, your thermostat, etc. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a surveillance system and is used to x-ray you in the airport. The so-called smart appliances listen to your every command, which means they are listening to you. I don't want to live in a world where around every corner is a piece of technology snooping in on my conversation. This is beyond Orwellian. The propaganda campaign for 5G is just getting started, and they're telling us that it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But guess what? 5G was developed in the nation of Israel, and Israel is not putting 5G in their country because they know what this is. These lawyers that you have are going to come up here and try to debunk me, but I had an industry trade publication where GSMA Intelligence tells us this reality. This is unneeded technology being forced on the population. We are told that China is doing this, therefore we need to compete.
30 seconds.
China is a nation that has enslaved its population and is doing so with technology like this. If we really care about being a free country, the last thing we should be doing is emulating China. Do the right thing. Say no to 5G in Hermosa Beach. Here's the publication that I have. about where they tell us all about this technology, what it's going to do, what it's capable of, and that certain countries who developed it are not even getting it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I would suggest we all seem to be pretty much in agreement with this, and it seems to me we're at that point where a motion should be made.
All right. Sounds like Councilmember Maskey wants to make that motion, so why don't you take a stab at it?
All right. Madam Mayor, I move that we introduce for first reading the attached ordinance to amend the Municipal Code Title 12 to regulate wireless telecommunication facilities in the public right-of-way and determine the project is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. That we direct staff to bring back design standards as a separate resolution, a master license agreement with a standard lease rate for use of any public property for these facilities, and direct public works staff to bring back an amendment to the master fee schedule to establish application fees and penalty fees. That is the motion. I will just simply note that what I intend in moving that we introduce for first reading the attached ordinance is that the ordinance would be as amended pursuant to the advice of the Assistant City Attorney and the City Attorney during the course of the hearing this evening.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in...
Before you vote, if I may read the title of the ordinance itself. This is an ordinance of the City of Hermosa Beach, California, amending the Municipal Code Title 12 to add Chapter 12.18, Wireless Facilities in Public Rights-of-Way, to regulate the wireless facilities in the public right-of-way.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? No? All right, let's take our vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe we have to do roll call.
No, Hanny has dropped off of the call. So.
All right. Aye.
All right.
Okay, we have one more public hearing.
All right.
Good evening, my name is Joe Briano. I run the FullertonInformer.com website and the Fullerton Informer YouTube channel, website called WiFiDangers.com and CellTowerDangers.com and 5GDangers.com and a number of other sites. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this document. This is a CIA declassified document from the Soviet Union, specifically going over what millimeter waves do to people. I know what Bill Clinton did when he was in the White House, and he tried to tie your hands and say no to putting this weaponry everywhere. I'm here to tell you, I'm going to leave you a copy of this document, that what you're going to be voting on is what color to paint the guns aimed at your residence. Millimeter waves are a weapon. Millimeter waves are a carcinogenic compound. 41 years ago, 1977, they knew this stuff affected the central nervous system, blood chemistry, brain function, reflexes, cognitive function, all of these things, all the way down to the mitochondrial function of the cells. It's right here in this document. And by listening to you and reading the staff reports, you all have a good command of the English language. And if you think you have no way of stopping this, you're terribly mistaken. Because you have an arsenal at your disposal of legal help that can do just what Seattle did and say no to this. And push it back and say, no, these are our goals, these are our people. Forget the gold tassel around that flag. Forget the facts that you may not believe in the one that the Bible talks about when you were sworn into office. I'm going to say something right now tonight, because I didn't hear an invocation to this meeting, but in the name of Jesus Christ, may you charts, and that's a dichotomy imbalance with a bunch of people making a lot of money off this gold rush, killing everybody. And we got a president who's pushing this like it's the neatest thing since sliced bread. 5G is the Trump agenda. I'm going to go in one more thing. You're going to get it to the windows. You're going to get it to the outside. There's going to need to be a wide gauge system in the home at 60 gigahertz. That's the absorption spectrum of oxygen molecules, ladies and gentlemen. It affects the orbital spin properties of the valence electrons of the diatomic oxygen molecules. And the millimeter wave sub 60 gigahertz affects the hemoglobin, oxygen uptake. I'm telling you, there's all kinds of ways you can stop this. 5gdangers.com, the FullertonInformer.com. In the name of Almighty God, would you please open your eyes? And where's the clerk that I can read this document with? Who can I hand this to? Very good, thank you. Thank you. This is right here.
Madam Mayor, I would suggest we all seem to be pretty much in agreement with this, and it seems to me we're at that point where a motion should be made.
All right. Sounds like Councilmember Massey wants to make that motion, so why don't you take a stab at it?
All right. Madam Mayor, I move that we introduce for first reading the attached ordinance to amend the Municipal Code Title 12 to regulate wireless telecommunication facilities in the public right-of-way and determine the project is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. That we direct staff to bring back design standards as a separate resolution, a master license agreement with a standard lease rate for use of any public property for these facilities, and direct public works staff to bring back an amendment to the master fee schedule to establish application fees and penalty fees. That is the motion. I will just simply note that what I intend in moving that we introduce for first reading the attached ordinance is that the ordinance would be as amended pursuant to the advice of the Assistant City Attorney and the City Attorney during the course of the hearing this evening.
All right, do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, all those in...
Before you vote, if I may read the title of the ordinance itself. This is an ordinance of the City of Hermosa Beach, California, amending the Municipal Code Title 12 to add Chapter 12.18, Wireless Facilities and Public Rights-of-Way, to regulate the wireless facilities in the public right-of-way.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? No? All right, let's take our vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe we have to do roll call.
No, anymore. No, Hanny has dropped off of the call. So...
All right. Aye.
All right.
Okay, we have one more public hearing.
All right.
Stephanie Guajardo, and I'm here as a concerned citizen about the deployment of this 5G network that we are seeing all over the country. I find it really interesting that you have all of these representatives from telecom companies making a big case and have the audacity that this is just going to be implemented without any pushback. The damaging health effects of 5G and its clear medical data and of its effects on creating cancer, on creating all kinds of chronic health effects is something that I find odd that you guys wouldn't even question. In fact, that the residents here that have spoken only care about how it looks and how it affects your guys' property value is ridiculous to me. The fact that you guys don't even question how this is going to affect human health on a wide scale, and on top of that, basically give the technology to spy on Americans and taking the Patriot Act to a whole other level is horrifying. Everybody's dead in here. I don't understand why nobody is sounding the alarm on how dangerous this is. People need to understand what is being implemented on our country in our systems on human health, you should all be ashamed of yourselves if you do know the effects. And if you don't, then please study up on it, educate yourself, because this is not acceptable. You will get pushed back. And I get that people have pensions, you want to have your 401ks, you want your vacation, you want to have a nice cushy life, but know that this affects thousands of people, if not millions. Please take a stand like what Palm Beach, Florida did and what Seattle did in opting out of 5G. Please push back and recognize that we, as citizens, have a right to push back against all these multinational corporations who have billions of dollars and throw it, your way to different, using lobbyists and representatives trying to act like it's just some great new technology that helps us download our movies faster on Netflix or whatever it is. It's not. JP Morgan once said, there are two reasons a man does something, a good reason and a real reason. The good reason is that we have great new technology that enables us to upload our pictures on Instagram even faster and do live stream video. Awesome. But you know what? The real reason is we are having an American, an issue of conscience right now. We need to recognize what the U.S. government is doing and these intelligence, secret agencies in the U.S. are using our tax dollars that are sent in to spy on us, to create all kinds of health effects in order to eventually move us into these kill grids, to act like we don't have any say over our own health. And you know what? A great way to offset all this is also just to have simple plans, not bring in the 5G Wi-Fi. So while you guys try to figure out ways to implement this in the public, we will find ways around this system. We will not accept it without a fight. Thank you.
One more. This would be Daniel Porter.
Good evening, everybody. This agenda is being pushed down from the top down, meaning from government and even powers beyond government, down through governmental agencies like the FCC, and then by these telecom companies. And we've already heard all these paid mouthpieces of all the telecom companies here to push this on as if it's something great and good as a disguise, because of course we need to download a movie so much faster. No different than the paid mouthpieces of the pharmaceutical companies who come in and push their poison pills dressed in nice suits to the doctors, which of course then they push to their clients. Anyhow, many here have already spoken about the dangers of it, and for any of you to make any decisions without looking into this on your own after tonight is despicable and dishonorable, dishonest, and totally violating what you're here to be doing. Now, I believe everyone in life is told the truth at least once, and once you're told the truth, it's up to you what you do from that point on. You can either, take your measly paycheck to be part of this evil agenda and eventually get your eternal residence in a lakefront property at the Lake of Fire, or you can do the right thing. You can make the right decisions. You can look into this on your own. Now, you want to put all these receivers through all these walk streets and do everything. You know how densely packed this community is. I've been living here my whole life. It's going to fry everybody. Look at the statistics on what it does to animals when they put it in here. Plants won't grow near. I can already feel the effects of this Wi-Fi router right above my head back here. So if you guys don't look into the health concerns that these new weapon systems that these big mouthpieces are pushing, then that's going to be on you. I'm just here to place responsibility on you because the universe just heard me tell you. That's all I have to say.
Madam Mayor, I would suggest we all seem to be pretty much in agreement with this, and it seems to me we're at that point where a motion should be made.
All right. Sounds like Councilmember Maskey wants to make that motion, so why don't you take a stab at it?
All right. Madam Mayor, I move that we introduce for first reading the attached ordinance to amend the Municipal Code Title 12 to regulate wireless telecommunication facilities in the public right-of-way and determine the project is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. That we direct staff to bring back design standards as a separate resolution, a master license agreement with a standard lease rate for use of any public property for these facilities, and direct public works staff to bring back an amendment to the master fee schedule to establish application fees and penalty fees. That is the motion. I will just simply note that What I intend in moving that we introduce for first reading the attached ordinance is that the ordinance would be as amended pursuant to the advice of the Assistant City Attorney and the City Attorney during the course of the hearing this evening.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in...
Before you vote, if I may read the title of the ordinance itself. This is an ordinance of the City of Hermosa Beach, California, amending the Municipal Code, Title 12, to add Chapter 12.18, Wireless Facilities in Public Rights-of-Way, to regulate the wireless facilities in the public right-of-way.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? No? All right, let's take our vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe we have to do roll call.
No, Hanny has dropped off of the call. So...
All right. Aye.
All right.
Okay, we have one more public hearing.
All right. Madam Clerk.
Hello friends, Neil here, EMF Safety Zone channel. It's been a long time since I've done a video. Haven't done very many of them because I feel like I've covered a lot in the videos that I've already done. But people have been asking me to show what a cell phone does when it's put on airplane mode. And I feel that's a really important video that I should have got to you a long time ago. So basically, here's a very quick video. Now, you're looking at the acoustometer, obviously on the right, and this acoustometer is turned on. So you can see I'm in a completely non-wireless environment. You see a tiny little blip of green on the left side of the meter showing up periodically because the cell phone is leaking out some amount of radiation. But right now, the cell phone is on airplane mode. I'll show you what happens when I take it off of airplane mode. All right, so basically, I'm just turning the volume down. Basically, people are carrying their cell phones around all day long, ready to receive calls, ready to text, and this is the radiation. You can see the radiation topping the meter out in terms of peak signal strength. And it's getting up to 2,500 to 5,000 microwatts per square meter on average power density. And this is going into a person's body all day long, even when the cell phone's sitting on the passenger seat of your car. This is basically the radiation that everybody is exposing themselves to, even when they're not using the phone. Now, I come back and I put the phone back on airplane mode, and you can see the meter stops registering any microwave radiation. So I think this simple test will show you that the safest way to use a cell phone is to carry it with you during the day and put it on airplane mode. And then when you want to use the phone to receive some calls or to make some calls or to get your messages, then take it off of airplane mode and use it, and then put it back on airplane mode. So once again, this is an excellent test here because I am in a non-wireless environment. And I do see a tiny little blip of green showing up on the meter here. I don't know if you could, yep, there you go. So the phone is leaking a little bit of radiation. I don't know what that's about. However, as you can see, this is much better carrying the phone on airplane mode than when airplane mode is off and you're carrying your phone around naturally, and you can see that the phone is constantly exchanging data with a local cell tower, and this would be radiating through a person's body, whether it's in your purse, whether it's in your front or your back pocket, whether it's in your shirt pocket. This radiation is breaking through the blood-brain barrier and through the gut-brain barrier. So I would definitely suggest learning the very, very good habit, or practicing the very, very good habit of carrying your phone around on airplane mode until you're ready to use it. All right, I hope this is a good video for you and was a little educational. Thank you so much.